We've all heard the theory of the Big Bang, the earliest point in creation where everything in the universe sprung out from a dense, hot speck of energy, a trillion times smaller than an atom. But before then, scientists say there was absolutely nothing. No space, no time, no universe. But that doesn't make a lot of sense because something can't come from nothing. So something had to have created the nothing that gave rise to the Big Bang. So in today's video, we're going to take a look back into the greatest mystery in the universe. If the universe formed from nothing, who created nothing? The Big Bang is the widely accepted origin story of the universe, from a scientific standpoint anyways. A point some 13.8 billion years ago, where all we see and observe today was contained in an infinitesimally hot, dense and small region, so small that physics is unable to calculate the nature of that early universe. And although scientists have been able to observe and theorize this earliest point in our universe, it still leaves the question of what preceded the Big Bang. Well, science may finally have an answer for that. The singularity. Science has established that all of space and time came from a single point that exploded and expanded to contain the entire universe. This singularity didn't already exist in space and time, but it initiated the expansion and cooling of space-time itself. The singularity contained the perfect cosmic soup, such that if it was a single degree hotter or cooler, the Big Bang might never have happened, and all we see today, including our small blue planets, might not have existed. So the question is, what could possibly have created this perfect mix of cosmic energy? Most scientists would tell you that the singularity came from nothing, but that goes against every law of physics and quantum mechanics. Something had to have preceded the nothingness for it to have existed. But before we get into how our universe was created from nothing, first let's trace far back to the earliest stages of the Big Bang to understand how nothing gave way to the very first atomic materials that made up the observable universe. Science lets us know that in the earliest point of the Big Bang, and we're talking a trillionth of a second, extremely dense particles of energy sprung out spontaneously to give rise to the singularity that birthed the Big Bang. This could have been the threshold where creation went from nothing to something. But then again, what created these particles of energy? You might think it's impossible for an empty space to suddenly fill up with particles of energy, but according to physics, it's not entirely impossible. We now move into the realm of quantum physics, which tells us that even in an empty vacuum, or in this case empty space-time, there is a significant level of quantum activity in the form of energy fluctuations. This may sound like a theory from a sci-fi movie, but these invisible energy particles have actually been observed in countless experiments and research labs here on Earth. The space-time vacuum in the early universe was filled with these energy particles, which were constantly in a state of creation and destruction, apparently resulting from nothing. So quantum physics has an explanation for the rise of matter in the form of energy fluctuations during the earliest stages of the Big Bang. We can now ask the most basic question: where did space-time itself come from? Some explanations for creation have gone as far as stating that the universe was a result of supernatural forces or a divine being. But before we jump into the chances of the existence of God, there are still theories that physics can still explain. One such explanation includes the existence of a multiverse, which states that there are an infinite number of parallel universes coexisting but never colliding. But this theory of the multiverse still leaves the question of how each universe is created. Cycles from nothing. Another suggested theory is the widely debated scenario of the existence of a cyclic model of universes, whereby the death of one universe leads to the birth of another, and an infinite cycle continues. This theory was made popular by scientist and Nobel Prize-winning physicist Roger Penrose, who postulated this plausible but highly controversial theory for a cyclic universe, where he termed conformal cyclic cosmology. Penrose's idea is rather simple. It states that our universe did not simply come from nothing, but was in fact the product of a dead past universe. In his published theories, Penrose stated that the Big Bang was the result of the final stages of this pre-existing universe, which he stated was filled with billions of unending black holes. According to his theory, these black holes had consumed all cosmic matter within their own universe, leaving it void of matter and light. He went on to state that the final stages of this pre-existing universe was filled with dead, evaporating black holes, which at the last stages of their existence were nothing but photons, that existed outside of space and time. According to his research, these last remaining photons of the pre-existing universe were incredibly similar to the first photons that were observed during the very first milliseconds of the Big Bang. This essentially means that the singularity that resulted in the Big Bang is mathematically or otherwise equivalent to the cold, dead, pre-existing universe. Penrose laid the basis of his theory on his study of the cosmic microwave background. This was essential as the CMB is the most prominent scientific picture we have of the early stages after the Big Bang, as it shows the most primitive cosmic radiation that engulfed the entire universe during its earliest stages. In his report, Penrose stated that there is indeed evidence within the CMB that indicates the remnants of collisions of supermassive black holes. This is significant because at that point in creation, there were no black holes yet. He stated that gravitational waves produced by the collision of these supermassive black holes were powerful enough to permeate through the Big Bang and also remained evident well after our early universe had cooled enough. Based on his theory, the period from a Big Bang at the birth of a universe to the infinite expansion at the end of the same universe is called an eon. The unstoppable expansion and oblivion of one eon becomes the foundation and subsequent Big Bang of the next eon cycle, meaning the death of one universe births the beginning of another. At the critical point between the end of the previous eon and the start of another, the laws of space and time become irrelevant, hence making the start of the new eon seem quite small relative to its observers. This simply means that the inhabitants of an eon or new universe can only observe to the point at which their universe starts, as beyond that point space and time breaks down beyond their observation. Most scientists consider Penrose's theory of a cyclic universe to be a plausible explanation for the nothingness that preceded the Big Bang, but they have asked a very fundamental question that I'm sure is at the back of everyone's mind. How is it possible that a very cold and empty universe can somehow result in an incredibly dense and hot universe from another perspective? The answer to that question, according to Penrose, is a rather complex mathematical process known as conformal rescaling. This procedure is a geometrical transformation in which the effect alters the size of an object, but has no effect on its shape. In essence, what we observe as a small dense ball of energy that is the Big Bang could have been an infinitely large universe from the perspective of those who inhabited it. Penrose's theory of conformal cyclic cosmology offers some intriguing but rather controversial answers to the origins of our universe. But it still leaves a big question unanswered. Even if our universe is part of a long chain of pre-existing universes, how did the entire cycle begin? What gave rise to the very first universe that began the chain of eons and universes? This still brings us back to the very fundamental question of whether the universe or universes arose from nothing, or was some being responsible for the creation of the universe as we know it. We've stretched the limits of physics and quantum mechanics, none of which provide definitive explanations for the origin of the universe with our current knowledge of science. But looking at myths and folklore worldwide, Penrose's cyclic model of the universe has a striking resemblance to the Norse mythology of Ouroboros. The ancient serpent, Jormungandr, is the child of the Norse god Loki, who consumes its tail, and the circle in turn sustains the balance of the world. Or this could simply prove the existence of some all-powerful divine being at the beginning of all creation, responsible for kickstarting the very first universe, which goes on to repeat the cycle of expansion and creation to the point of creation we are now in. What do you think is behind the curtains of nothingness at the start of creation? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.